Okay, so we're
My
live.
microphone thing is.
Hi, Professor Thurber.
Hello, how are you?
Good. All right, go ahead.
All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Will Thurber. I'm here in the Faculty of Business at UOIT, and I guess we're going to talk about business communications today. So, a couple of things. If there's ever any questions, feel free to jump in with those questions. Also, as part of this presentation, I'm going to ask you to give me your thoughts on a couple of questions, and I'm going to have you text the answers to me. Okay, so if you have your smartphones, and you can just get them out, because those sorts of questions will be popping up in just a second here, okay?
Does anyone need to get theirs, or it's on your body?
Sure.
Texting? Okay. Is everyone got their phones out? Yeah. Good?
Right.
Okay.
Let's get started, okay? Well, there we go. So we're going to talk about the business of communicating. One of the themes we're going to talk about today is how communication. Really, this is not a lecture that's limited to business. It's going to be applicable no matter what job you have in the future, and even in your own personal lives. So maybe this will help you do a better job of communicating. So if we look at today's objectives, there we go. Okay. So the questions we're going to look at are how do we communicate, and even why do we communicate? In the sense of, well, what are we trying to achieve when we communicate? Why are communication skills important to you going forward from here? And how can you be a better communicator? So the first question I'm going to ask you is this one. Now, what do we use to communicate? And by that, what I mean is, what are the ways we use to communicate? Now, what forms of communication do we use? So if we go to this next slide, what you'll see, so, oops. There we go. Okay. So if you text William Thurb, WILLIAMTHURB 828 to, and the number is 37607. You need to do that once to join. Then what I want to know is if you send me a text saying, what are the ways we communicate, okay? So I'll wait here for your answers, and we'll see what we get.
Do you want to try it and make sure it works? So 37607.
Right?
Okay.
37607. And then text I'm not sure if it's case sensitive or not, but capital W, capital ILLIAM THURB, and then 828. Then you'll join our little group here.
Is it 828? 8 what? 828. 828?
WILLIAM THURB 828. Texting that to the number is 37607.
Why do you have to text that?
I don't know. So you're putting this, and it's your text, what you're texting? Okay. Okay, so can a couple of you try it? Make sure, maybe it's a test.
Will, can we just ask you the questions on the mic?
You mean answer the questions?
Yes.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Ignore that. Oh, okay. So we don't need our phones? No.
So this looks gray to them.
Oh, I see.
It's running some sort of web sort of interface portal, which I guess is it's just this frame, but it's gray.
Okay.
So.
All right. So this isn't working. Okay. This would have been awesome. I got to tell you that. This is.
Okay, I think we're going to verbally ask and answer questions.
Do you want me to go back one slide to the question?
Yeah, sure. Why don't we go back to the slide? Okay. So what are the ways we use to communicate? What do we use to communicate? Any answers?
How do we communicate? Texting. Oh, say it louder.
Texting.
Sure. When the PowerPoint works, yeah, we use text. How else?
You know,
You gotta talk louder and clearer.
Email?
Email.
You hear me or?
Yeah, email?
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
Here you go.
Face-to-face confrontation.
Sure, voice. You guys are doing a great job so far. What else?
Tinder.
What did you say? I didn't catch that answer. Was that a real answer? Okay.
Yes.
It kind of is.
Oh, it's an app. Okay, so electronically.
Webcam.
Webcam, good.
Sure. That's almost like face-to-face, right? Verbal?
Absolutely.
Was that what you meant, or is there something else on the webcam you meant?
Did you mean verbal when you said webcam? Is that you, Chris? Yeah?
You said it.
What else? How else can you communicate with the webcam?
Oh, oh, say that louder, Chris.
Body language.
Yeah, for sure. Body language. Good. What else?
Sign language.
Sign language. Sure. Any particular sign you want to? You're thinking about?
Hello.
Maybe I don't. Maybe it's good I don't have the camera turned on right now. Okay. Well, that's a good start. Why don't we go on from there? Okay. So we're going to go through that next slide. Pass. Next one. Okay. So yeah, we talked about verbal communication. We're talking about written communication. So that could be a text or an email or a letter. We're talking about oral communication, face-to-face or across the web. I also talked about nonverbal communication. Somebody mentioned body language and signs and gestures. But even when we're writing our emails, right, we use emoticons. Those aren't really words, right? That's nonverbal. And even the tone of voice that we use, right? The way that somebody says something. There's a big difference between saying, "Oh, sure, that's a great answer," and "Oh, sure, that's a great answer," right? So even the tone that we use in our voice is going to affect things. So if we move on from there, so we know what we're using to communicate. Those are what we call our channels of communication. So from there, we're going to go on to what do we use to communicate. So, okay, so why do we communicate? What's the purpose of our communications?
Say that, Victor.
Express our thoughts.
Express our thoughts.
Sure. Okay. Okay. To express thoughts. Good. What else?
Gain relationships.
That's actually a better answer than what I've got here.
Business.
Say that again, Alex. That's a good one.
Gain relationships.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a social aspect to communication. What else? Any other ways?
Get a message across.
Oh, for sure. Get a message across. Excellent. Okay, so let's take a look here. So, like I said, my answers aren't as good as yours. You should take my job. Maybe we all come over here and all go sit in the classroom in Whitby. So we communicate to connect to each other. That's that social aspect, right? Because humans are social beings, so we want to connect with each other. We want to talk to each other. And then, especially in a business and professional setting, we communicate to transfer information. But even when even in our personal lives, we exchange information with other people. Well, the purpose of our communication is to transfer this information or to connect with other people. Okay, so how can we do that effectively? What makes communication effective? What problems do we encounter? We want to look at it from the other side. What problems do we encounter when we communicate?
Problems when we communicate. What's the big one?
Language barrier.
Okay. Can you explain what you mean by language barrier?
Speaking English to someone who doesn't know English.
If you could hear that. Different languages.
Yes, like you're talking formal languages like English to French or German or Urdu?
Yep.
Okay. What other kind of language problems might we have?
Vernacular.
What was that?
Vernacular.
What does that mean?
Like slang or dialect or something.
Impressive. Did you hear that, Professor?
I sure did. No, vernacular is absolutely right. So, when I talk to my kids and they tell me, things like, OMG, I go, what the heck is an OMG? There's certainly, even within English, there are certain vernaculars. My family comes from North Carolina, so I can tell you right now that if somebody from the South tells you, God bless that person, that's not a compliment. Okay, it may sound nice, but it's not a compliment if somebody says, "Well, bless his heart." So when we're communicating, we want to make sure that there's no language barrier. Okay, that we're talking a common language. What else? What else makes a communication effective?
The big one with texting.
No service. Come to solutions.
What's that, Alex?
Come to solutions.
Come to solutions?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Come to agreement.
To come to an agreement?
Yeah.
What could cause a problem with that? What could misconstrue us coming to a solution?
You don't have to talk the same problem.
Oh.
Can't solve problems.
Talking to someone properly?
Oh, sure. So talking to somebody properly, so the context of the communication can sometimes get in the way of the communication. But one of my favorite expressions is, who you are is drowning out what you're saying. We'll come to that a little bit later on. Okay, what else? Okay, well, let's move on. We'll see what we got here. Okay, that would have been awesome if that had come through. So what makes communication? We have to consider, what do we want from the communication? Well, why are we communicating with this person in the first place? And make sure that the intent of the communication is adhered to in a way that we are communicating what we want to communicate, and it's being heard. Because sometimes I might say something to somebody, and because of their context or their background, their language, their vernacular, they're hearing something entirely different. We also have to adapt our message to meet the needs of our audience. And that's that context thing that you talked about before. Okay? Okay, one last question. I'm going to answer this one. Is professional communication different from personal communication? I want you to think about that for a second. And the answer is no. All communication has the same fundamental needs. Now, sure, in a professional context, you're right. You're probably going to be using different language. You want to stay away from vernacular. You want to make sure that you're being understood. But sometimes even professions have vernaculars. I was talking to one of my colleagues here the other day about, we were looking at some research. We were concerned about the bias in the research. And the term we were using was heteroskedasticity. Well, okay, I can use that term with one of my professional colleagues here, but if I'm talking to a first-year class that hasn't had advanced statistics, heteroskedasticity is not going to mean anything to them. So we have to make sure that, and that's an example of professional vernacular. Sometimes we can use a vernacular to communicate quickly, because heteroskedasticity is a well-defined concept in statistics. But if you're not trained in statistics, then it's just going to leave you out in the cold. You're not going to know what we're talking about. Okay, so all of our communications have to have a purpose, and we have an audience that we're communicating to, and there's going to be some information that we want to transfer to them. And then we're going to talk about, in a little while, we're going to talk about this information must be of benefit to them. There must be a reason they need to know this information. And then there's that context thing that we keep going back to. So gossip, in this sense, if you're gossiping with somebody, the same rules apply for gossip as it would for, say, instructions for building a web page. So let's move on. So why are communication skills important to you? Overwhelmingly, in every poll of employers, the ability to communicate effectively is the skill that they want to see most, more than anything else. They don't. A lot of employers don't even care what degree you have. If you have a liberal arts degree, that's fantastic. If you have a business degree, fine. If it's a science degree, that's good too. The big question is, can you communicate? If you can't communicate, then really it doesn't matter what knowledge you have or what your problem-solving abilities are. You can't communicate those, your thoughts and contribute to the overall goals of the organization. You're of no use. If you're of no use, then you're literally worthless. If you're worthless, nobody's going to pay you. So they don't want to hire you in the first place. So you have to be able to communicate. As a fundamental skill, it says here to manage information, use numbers effectively. Numbers don't speak for themselves. You have to interpret the numbers, to think and solve problems. Your communication, you demonstrate positive attitudes at work. Teamwork skills, you communicate to work with others and participate in projects and tasks. So this is a skill that transcends whatever level of in the organization you are. So if you are, whether you're an entry-level manager or an executive vice president or CEO, you're required to write emails and reports. You have to work productively in groups. Okay? Even if you're in the trades, you have to write incident reports and instructions. I have to deal with, on some of the work I do as a volunteer outside of my professional life here at the university, I'm reading incident reports from, in this case, soccer referees. And sometimes, because the incident report is written so poorly, you can't take any action on the incident. So it's useless. The 15 or 20 minutes or so that the referees sat and wrote that incident report, because he or she can't communicate effectively, it was just a complete waste of their time and my time and the committee's time when we're reviewing the report afterwards. For engineers, technical people, have to manage projects, have to write technical reports all the time. So, I said poor writing is costly. In this global environment, we can't afford to waste money. So we're competing not only within Durham region, Ontario, and Canada, we're competing with companies all over the world. So anything that costs us more money, we want to eliminate. We want to get down to the bare requisite requirements to produce the goods or services that we're producing. So if you have poor writing, it takes more time to read and to interpret it. Go back and say, what did you mean by this? I don't understand. Can you explain? Oftentimes you get those sorts of things. When you go back to the other person, because it was clear in their mind what they were saying, the concepts that you're trying to communicate oftentimes are very, very clear in your own mind. The words, the images, the way you communicate those is not clear to the other person. So when somebody comes back and asks for clarification, that creates conflict sometimes. Well, what do you mean you don't understand this? It's clear as a bell. So, and then, the person who didn't have, couldn't understand the communication in the first place feels diminished. And their attitude gets poor. Well, bad communication, more than just the time to read, it actually irritates the reader, irritates the writer at the end of time. So good writing saves time and saves money, saves the energy of having to spend all that time trying to clarify things, and want to move on to the goal that we're working for. And good communication not only builds goodwill in the sense that it's clear, but even when you have to deliver bad news to somebody, if you do it well, if you communicate that well, you can still build goodwill to that customer or that supplier or that stakeholder in your firm, even though you're delivering bad news to them, because you do it so professionally. Well, in our, with my first year class, and this is business communications is one of the required first year courses here. We use a model here on communications we call it the PBOK model. So PBOK is just an acronym that says that every communication you write should have a purpose to it. that you should know who the audience is, and that'll help inform how you can communicate. What you have to understand, what information do you have to include in this communication for it to be understood? How is the reader going to benefit from this? How are we going to make their lives better by having this information? If you can't make their life better by having this information, maybe they shouldn't be wasting their time giving it to them in the first place. What objections is your audience going to have when they get this information? How are they going to react to it? Are they going to have questions? And then the last one is that context variable again. How is the context of the communication, where it takes place, when it takes place, how it takes place? How is that going to impact how well the communication is understood? Let's look at these one by one. So the first one is, what is the purpose in your writing? Well, whenever you're communicating, whether it's orally, you're talking to someone face to face, whether it's an email or text, they should understand what the purpose is. Now, in ongoing conversations, especially when it's a give and take and not a one-way conversation, that purpose, you don't have to repeat that purpose all the time, I'm telling you this, unless you think that the other person, or the conversation is deviating from the purpose that you initiated the conversation. So articulate your reason for the communication. Simple words, direct sentences, proper grammar, again, so that you're understood. The reason we have grammatical conventions is so that everyone can understand what you're saying, what you mean. Even in written communication, even something as innocuous as the placement of a comma in a sentence can vastly change the meaning of a sentence. So we have to make sure that the other person understands our purpose. If anybody out there is a Simpsons fan, any Simpsons fans? Sir? No? Am I the only guy in this room that likes the Simpsons? Apparently so. Homer Simpson's father is a caricature of a person, especially I find this actually with my own mother, and maybe you find it with your grandparents, that you may enter into a conversation with them, or they'll start a conversation, and they might start out with saying, "Oh boy, there's a lot of snow out there," and then snow becomes, it's really, really cold. And I remember one time it got cold. I went skiing with all my friends, and we were in the mountains, and then there was this really nice chalet, and there was a really nice fireplace. In the fireplace there was wood. Thanks, Jim. In the fireplace there's this pine wood, and the pine wood smelled really, really nice. And I decided to carve something, and the conversation is just one stop after another along this trail of random ideas that pop up. There's really no purpose to that communication, and they just keep on talking. You don't want to get that. Start with a purpose. Now put the information into context. So, for example, I told you I work with a soccer club, and if I were in that soccer club, if I told somebody in the soccer club, go get me 12 soccer balls and a couple of goals and some hurdles and some pylons, they may not really, they might go do that for me, but they may not really understand it. But if I told them, oh, we're going to have a practice for the under-9 boys team, so I'm going to need 12 soccer balls, a couple of goals, pylons, and some hurdles, not only will they understand why I'm asking them that and be more amenable to getting it, it's not some sort of random request, but also they'll be able to make better decisions. Because I don't know if anyone there knows a lot about soccer, but soccer has different size of balls, different size of goals. So even though I didn't specify what size soccer balls I need, when they know that the purpose to organize a practice for an under-9 team, then they know that it's a size 4 ball, and they know the size of the goal that's required, and that's sort of information. So they don't have to come back to me for clarification because they understand the purpose of my communication. So making the purpose, communicating the purpose clearly is maybe the most important thing about communication. The next one is going to be audience. You might want, who is your audience? What is their level of understanding? We mentioned before someone who's an expert in statistics versus somebody who's a novice in statistics. But it doesn't. It's not just statistics, but it's any sort of endeavor. Today I was talking to a friend of mine. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there have been a number of studies that show that women get charged about 30% more for auto repair than men, because auto mechanics make an assumption. Talking to men, I shouldn't say that women get charged 30% more. Men get charged 30% less, because when women go into a garage, mechanics assume the women don't know anything about auto mechanics, don't know anything about engines, so they can inflate bills, where men may know something about auto mechanics and know how long it should take to, or they assume men know that they know how long it should take to, say, change brakes on a car, and therefore they don't inflate the bills, or they don't overcharge the men. And the funny part is that the only thing I know about a car is the one on the right makes it go and the one on the left makes it stop. And other than that, the wheel in the middle tells me what direction I'm going. Other than that, I really don't know a lot about auto mechanics. But because I'm a man, they'll make that assumption. So the point here is, what is the level of understanding of your audience? When my mechanic comes out to me and talks to me about some part of the engine, I don't know anything about auto mechanics. Some part of the engine needs changing. I really don't know what he's talking about. He has to talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old. Get me to understand that. But if I were an expert, if I was a motorhead, you might be able to talk to me using different language. So whether it's a friend versus a novice. And then what you guys said earlier is true as well. What is the relative standing of the people? Who are you talking to? Certainly you would address your friends differently than you would your principal or your parents or Prime Minister Harper, I think. Anyway, so you have to worry about who your audience is. Now if we move on to the information isn't only limited to what information has to be included in the communication. The information, certainly it's the information your audience needs to know. If you're trying to convince somebody of a position, in business we do that a lot, not only in terms of trying to sell things to our customers, but even if you're an accountant and presenting an idea to your superiors or to your clients, how they should rearrange their business. You have to sell that idea to them. You have to support that idea with information and how you organize information. What information will relate to them to support the position that you're taking. Beyond that, you also have to worry about how do you present that information. In charts or graphs, we use a visual representation. I think that humans tend to be visual learners, so if we can use that, present that information in a visual way with lots of colors and charts to make it easier to understand, that's a much better way of conveying quantitative data especially. Nothing more deadly than having a presentation, the chart just full of numbers and 8-point font. Oh my God, just kill me now anytime somebody does that to me. I see a presentation like that. But show me a bar chart or a histogram with different colors on it, and I'm right there with you all the time. And I'll understand that, and I'll remember that a little bit better as well. Okay, now the big one. Now, for my first-year students, I tell them, and if you come here next year and you're in my first-year class, you're going to hear me tell you this, that the most important thing I tell my first-year business communication students is benefits. Because your audience is always asking, what's in it for me? Why do I need to know this? How is this information going to make my life better? So you need to frame whatever information you're giving in a way that makes people's lives better. Even if that's going back to my request of the soccer ball. Why are you doing this? What is it that I need to tell you? And the answer is, I need to tell you this clearly so that we can get this set up quickly, so we can get the practice started faster, more efficiently, so we can get out of here faster. Okay? So there's always a benefit to the audience when you're communicating. And that is, like I say, the rest of your life, always think about what's in it for them. Anytime you're communicating to anybody, what's in it for them? Why do they need to know this? How are you making their lives better? And then the last one is objections. Oh, sorry, second last one, actually. Think about when you're telling people something, especially if you're giving them a new idea, how are they going to react to this? What questions might they have about it? Now, if somebody were to tell me, well, hey, Professor Thurber, you need to go bungee jumping, I'm going to have some objections to that. Why do I need to go bungee jumping? Why is that going to be fun for me? Why is that fun for you? That's something that I have no real interest in doing, to be perfectly honest. But even something as innocuous as football, going back to the soccer example, well, why do I have to go get those balls for you? Well, again, there's a situation where I didn't communicate the purpose well at the beginning. I just said, go get me the soccer balls. I didn't say, hey, we need to set up a practice for the U19. It may not be a life-changing objection, but try to anticipate what they're going to, how people will react to your communication, and then you'll be better prepared to answer questions. And you'll come off, especially in a business setting, looking more professional. And then the last one is context. Always be aware of how is context going to influence the result. So that could be the physical environment. There'll be noise in the physical environment. Well, if you're on the factory floor trying to talk to somebody, the ambient noise may be great, and they may not be able to fully understand what you're saying. But noise, noise is an example for background interference, not just noise from a big noisy machine, but it could be, as I tell my students here, one of my business communications classes is held in the morning in a classroom that faces east. If you want to come up and put some PowerPoint slides up on the screen while the sun is streaming into the room from the back windows, no one's going to be able to see your PowerPoint slides. So you better lower the drapes so that the room is darkened enough that the sun, the noise in this case from the sun, doesn't wash out your slides. So you have to make sure that that type of noise, all sorts of distractions, the type of message that you are conveying. There's a gentleman by the name of Ken Blanchard who's written a lot about leadership, and one of his rules in terms of leadership is public praise and private criticism. So if you're if you're managing a coupon and a bunch of offices is in an open space, and you need to criticize somebody, think about the context. You just don't want to walk in there and criticize them while everyone else can hear them. You want to walk in, bring them into a private area, and then have a discussion where you express the criticism. On the other hand, if they've done something really great, you want to praise them, there's no better place to do that than in an open office environment where they can take all those kudos right in front of all of their coworkers, where they get to take pride in whatever achievement you recognize. Another type of physical environment problem is time of day. I'm looking at the time of day here. The worst time of day to be speaking to anybody is right after lunch. Not sure what time you guys had off for lunch, but after lunch, people's energy cycles run down. Really terrible time to be making a presentation. Likewise, first thing in the morning. If you don't have a class or an audience that's full of morning people, they may not be fully awake yet. So take into account the time of day you're making a presentation and think about that. And then there's the psychological environment. What is the audience's attitude towards you? They know you. If they do know you, maybe they're attaching some properties to you. They know how you work. So again, if you're the boss and you're in management, one thing about university is we're training managers here. We're training people who are going to lead other people. So in this sense, the people who work for you are all what I call bossologists. They'll study you. They'll understand everything there is to know about you. If you want to come in and say to your employees, it's really important that you get to work on time, but you never show up until 10 o'clock in the morning. Again, what did I say before? Who you are, that is the person who doesn't get in until 10 o'clock in the morning, going to drown out the message that you're sending. That is, the rest of everybody else needs to be in at 8 o'clock. So be aware of that psychological environment as well. So that's pretty much all I've got to say to you guys today. So just to go over what we did, effective communication is a learned skill. Nobody is born with it. If you have some friends that you think are great communicators, probably because of something in their environment, maybe their parents they've learned from their parents to be great communicators, or they've paid attention to other people and they've learned from other people to be great communicators. The second one is communication skills apply to every type and every form of communication. This is important to communicate effectively with your friends when you're going home from school today, as it is when you get to the workplace and you're communicating the latest update on a project you might be working on. Thirdly, people who communicate get their ideas adopted. So you're more successful in the workplace, more successful in life, because people will, if you communicate effectively, people will believe what you're saying and do what you're asking them to do. The fourth one is people can communicate. Let me do that one more time. People who can communicate get jobs. It's just that simple. And people who can communicate get promoted in those jobs. Because the other thing about all of this, I'll leave you with this thought. A bad idea communicated really, really well is always going to win over a good idea that's communicated poorly. So that's a good thought to end on. I'll take any questions that you all have about business communications. I'm a marketing professor here at UOIT, and any questions about the university, I've got some people here to help me to answer any of these questions. So I'll turn it over to you guys.
Oh, I thought he said Douglas. I'm like, I didn't see that. Okay, I have candy for good questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so who's got a good question? Business communication, the commerce program, the business program at UOIT. Did that feel like a university lecture?
Yes.
Excellent. How come?
No.
Well, that's a good thing.
Because he's a real
Because he's a real professor. What does that make me? Yeah. Okay, so he came across as someone who really knows what he talks about, right?
Actually, I'm a 12-year-old boy. Let me rip off my face here. And
I have the first question for you, Professor. I notice in today's, especially in this generation, anytime I'm communicating with them, it always has to be more visual and more colorful. Is that a generational thing, or is that where we've gone with technology? Everything seems to have bells and whistles on communication now.
Honestly, I think that's a technology thing. When I was working on my PhD and taking statistics, the hot topic back then was, wow, guys, with all of this, color screens. I know this can be hard for your students to comprehend, but the big deal when computers were out, the big choice that you had back then was a screen with green characters or buying a screen with yellow characters. And the yellow character screens were really, really cool because everyone had green screens. There was no color terminals. There was none of that when the IBM PCs that came out in the early 80s through the 80s. It wasn't until 10 years later that we started getting color screens. And that's when the statistics people said, wow, this is great. We can do all these wonderful statistical analyses, factor analyses, principal components analyses, MANOVA, ANOVA, t-tests, regressions, whatever you have. But in order to communicate that information, we have all these great new tools to use that, colors and graphs and charts that we can put up using these great things. Back then it was Harvard Graphics, now it's PowerPoint. So I think because today's generation has always grown up, I'm imagining that your students were born probably, around 96 or so?
97.
96, 97, right? Okay, so they've always had this wonderful color technology that I didn't grow up with. So this has been basically the latent environment of communications, this full color stuff. So yeah, and I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. and certainly certainly color adds to a presentation and lets people understand the meaning of the numbers a lot more than, like, say, just a black and white chart.
I agree. Questions? CJ.
What kind of laptop do you get in the commerce program?
A good one. That's actually a really interesting question, because the laptop program is something that we're always re-examining. We want to make sure that we pride ourselves at this school about being cutting-edge technology. And 10 years ago, laptops were cutting-edge technology, and it's not so much anymore. And we're looking at different ways of being able to enhance the learning environment here of all of our students. So right now we've got some really nice, powerful laptops, and some of our students are experimenting with tablets that are supplied by the university. But there are some. I say we're in the middle of doing a really, really tight re-examination of that. Okay. Somebody sending me a note here. The actual laptop that we have is a Lenovo, the T520 i7 processor. Even more importantly, that if you were a student here getting the laptops that I'm using right here in front of me, the laptop is powerful, but the software that you get on the laptop is incredibly powerful. So I don't think a lot of people really appreciate how well armed they are on a technological front here. But as I say, we're always re-examining that, and right now we're taking a really long, hard look at that to see how we can even improve from here.
Another question? Lucas?
Based on what you taught us today about communication and commerce, what brands do you think best show that, like generation technology?
Sorry, what grants?
What brands like communicate?
Oh, wow. Oh, what a great question for a marketing professor. How long have we got here? What brands communicate really, really well? I think, actually, surprisingly, I think Lululemon has been doing an amazing job of communicating to their target audience. They're one for sure. Although it's not showing up in sales, because they have, McDonald's quite obviously does a really good job of communicating. Their big problem is the environment is changing around them. So what they've used to sell, burgers and fries, is not something that people like to eat anymore. And so they're experiencing some real issues around their base product line and what they're really known for. But they're doing a really terrific job in terms of communicating that. There are some smaller examples out there of people doing a really terrific job, but they're communicating into niche markets, and that's another big problem. Or sorry, another interesting application, because the big problem for marketers now, and again, not to be Homer Simpson's grandfather, but I grew up in Eastern Ontario, and believe it or not, the TV that we had in our house, and we only had one, got 3 TV channels. So if you wanted to communicate to me using TV advertising, 1/3 of the time you had to be right, because I only had 3 channels to tune into. When you add digital communication forms to all of the old electronic forms, radio, TV, etc., it's a really challenging environment for marketing communications right now to find an audience big enough and communicate to them in a way that people want to listen to the communication, as opposed to tuning it out or fast forwarding through it or whatever. So, yeah, great question. Thanks.
Next, Victor.
What university did you go to?
Oh, I did my. It's not in business anymore. I went to a small school in the United States called Eisenhower College. How many students are in your high school? Can I ask that question?
Just under 1,000.
Just under 1,000? Yeah, we had 362 students in our university when I went there to do my undergraduate degree. So I graduated with 64 other people in my class, and that's across all majors. And then I went on to do my master's degree at Clarkson University in Potsdam, New York. And if you're a hockey fan, especially a women's hockey fan, They're the reigning NCAA champions in hockey. Clarkson's not quite the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And then I went on to U of T to work on my PhD. By U of T, I mean University of Toronto, not University of Texas. Other questions?
Questions? Anything more about the business program?
Yeah. What are the grade requirements to get into the program?
It's in the 70s is the cutoff, and you have to have English and math. I'm getting coached here. Not my circus, not my monkeys, guys. I just show up. I show up in the first year class and teach. How you get to the first year class?
How big are your first year business classes? How many students?
Yeah. We do something really interesting here. I worked before I came to UIT. I worked at a different university, and I taught a first year class where there were 600 students in the classroom, and so I would lecture to them every week, and that was the class. Here we have the 400 students all in the class, but we break it out. So all of the it's two things. It's called a hybrid class, and it's a flipped classroom approach. So hybrid, all of the lecture and all of the stuff is delivered online, and then we have I meet with every first year student in classes of about 30. They probably range in size from 15. I think the cap is 35. It's the largest first year class I have, and we meet for an hour every week. And the flipped classroom approach is the tradition when I went to school. I came to class, I came to lecture, I took my notes, I went back to my dorm, I did my homework, I handed in my homework. Here, what we do is we discuss the homework in class, and then you go back and do it. So we actually take up the homework before it's due, so you have a good idea of how we were to do the assignment for that week. There are other assignments as well. There's tests and quizzes, that sort of thing that are done online. But the class every week is around 30 students. So I get to know, about this time of the year, I probably know of the 400 first year students, I probably know about 250 of them by name or by now.
Very cool.
Yeah, they're great kids. I love my job. I love meeting them. It's the best gig in the world. I can't. I think you all should become university professors.
There you go. Will?
Do you have any new business programs planned for the future?
New business program, like anything in particular?
Not really, just anything new.
There's been a greater emphasis on entrepreneurship here because one of the I don't know if you've heard, but General Motors isn't in the best economic shape right now, and they're still responsible directly for about 4,000 jobs here in Durham region, and there's probably another 8,000 to 12,000 jobs that are indirectly linked to General Motors. The people at the Economic Development Department here in Durham region have been reading and listening to a gentleman by the name of Richard Florida quite a bit, and he points out, reasonably so, that there are thousands of municipalities all over the world who are looking for the next Toyota factory or the next Google campus or whatever. So I mean, literally, you're competing in a lottery with, or your chances of winning are like 1 in 100,000. You might as well buy a 649 ticket. The really successful communities, and he looks at Pittsburgh as an example, Cleveland as an example, have reemerged and reinvented themselves as entrepreneurial hubs in what he calls the creative economy. There's a real emphasis here on entrepreneurship in our school. Our school is different than any other school. Like, again, if you come here, I'll tell you this first week. I'm a liberal arts grad, so I don't look down my nose at liberal arts grads. But this is a technical and professional school. Every person who comes here is trained for a profession. And in business, we're training future managers. In engineering, they're training engineers, and health science, they're training nurses and lab techs and preparing people for medical careers. Everyone who comes here, or most everyone who comes here, is trained to work in a specific profession. So that gives us a really nice niche to do some cross-pollination, if you will, from engineering and science and business, and getting people together to work on entrepreneurial ideas and trying to build businesses. And that's part of we're doing a campus expansion here. We're building north from the north campus here. I'm pointing out like you can see. But a large part of that is going to be building business incubators. One of the programs we have here is actually called a business incubator. We have about 12 businesses that are owned by students, run by students, where their world headquarters is an office here at UOIT, and they work together in an incubator environment so they can bounce ideas off of each other. So entrepreneurship is certainly a big focus, not only of this institution, but the entire Durham region, because they say they think that they're going to have the need to replace a lot of manufacturing jobs that we have relied on for so long here. The other program that we have here is called Informatics. It's a combination of computer science and information and data mining. And that's a big field. And actually, a lot of our students who are in informatics, as I understand it, and somebody can disagree with me if I'm wrong here, we have actually troubles keeping students in that program because people come in and hire them out before they've graduated, with enticing them with big fat paychecks. So sometimes it's really hard to say no to that sort of thing. The other area is the IT and gaming program that we have here at UOIT, and again, that creates all sorts of opportunities for entrepreneurial innovations in your business degree, and going and find a gaming student who's got some really good ideas for games and building a company around that. I guess that's kind of, so far as I understand it, I think that's where this faculty is heading over the next few years.
I think we need to wrap it up, actually. Their bell's going to go in 10 minutes. Yeah.
Oh.
It's time to go home. Is there any last words or any advice you can give them? These are grade 12 business students. They're doing very well so far.
Yeah, they're doing great. Yeah, I'll give you one last rule, and this is a freebie because normally you have to enroll here to get this advice. So if you want to send those checks to Will Thurber, the one rule of success I'll tell all my students is remember that you only have two things to do. You only have two jobs to do the rest of your life. And if you wake up every morning from now until, I don't know, that morning you don't wake up anymore, if you dedicate yourself to doing these two things every day the rest of your life, you're going to be very, very successful. And those two things are work hard, no matter what it is you're doing, whether you're a high school student, get up tomorrow morning and say, today I'm going to work hard as being a high school student. If Saturday, if you've got a job at McDonald's or Walmart or wherever it is, you're going to go in and you're going to work hard at that job and give it, give it your best effort. So work hard, and then always be charming. Because if you work hard, people will respect you. If you're charming all the time and you're always nice to other people, people will like you. And if people like and respect you, they will clear a path for you. They will promote you. They will push you. They will hire you when somebody moves to a different organization and has a great opportunity for you. They will remember you and call you up and say, I want you to come working for me. It's probably the best piece of advice that I've ever had in my life, and I got that late in life. But it's when I look back at the successes I've had in my life, I can pretty much always trace them back to working hard and being charming. That really sounds like a jackass thing to say, and I apologize for that. But try to be nice to people and try to work hard.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Hey, this is a really neat experience, especially because this is their last year at high school.
I'm really, really sorry. We had some cool word clouds that we were going to pop up here, and it just didn't work. I'm sorry for that.
No, that's great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Have a good day, y'all.
She's so well behaved.